All right, we're going to look at multiplying whole number by a fraction, and what we want to think about is, what would this look like if we were to draw it? What would this look like in a real world scenario? Because a lot of the real world cases where these show up, the numbers are kind of friendly. A lot of halves, a lot of quarters, a lot of eighths. So these are numbers that we can actually kind of picture in our heads and do some mental math on them. So we want to keep them simple. Because that's what we're going to see when we get out in the real world. So first one we're going to look at is how much is 3 groups of 1.5. So if we were to get that on a worksheet or something, it might be wrote out as 3 groups of 1.5. So we see this multiplication symbol, and folks want to come up with some kind of algorithm to work this out. But if we draw a picture, it can be pretty straightforward. So far I have one group. This would be one group of one full thing and then a half. So we've established that this rectangle, this yellow outline of a rectangle, that's going to be one whole thing. That one's full. This one is just a half of it. So the first number is telling us the number of groups. So in this one here, the first number is how many groups? Number of groups. So in this case we have 3 groups, and this is what's in each group. So sometimes we can say, well, it's 3 groups of 1.5. So if I draw that out, 3 groups of 1.5, well, that's one group of 1.5. So if this was 1 times 1.5, this is what it would look like. So I've got a computer here, so I'm going to cheat a little bit. So there's one group of 3.5. There's 2 groups of 3.5. I need 3 groups of 3.5. So there's 3 groups of 3.5. And then our job to finish off the question is just to kind of, put them all together. What would this equal if we put them all together? So I'm going to start by thinking, how many full rectangles can I make? Well, there's 1, 2, 3 rectangles right here. That's one. That's one. Below it, we have one rectangle here. One rectangle here, one rectangle here, 1, 2, 3, and over here I have parts of rectangles. So what I'm going to actually do is start down here and start taking, this is a half of a rectangle here, I'm going to take it from this one and put it up here. Now if you're not using a computer, you're just doing this drawing on paper, what I sometimes like to do is just draw an arrow from here and put it up to here, or I'll cross this one out and I'll shade it in up here, or I'll cross the bottom one out and I'll just check this one off. So okay, this piece is gone, I moved it up here. So this now makes the 2 halves full, makes another one rectangle. This, I have no more pieces to add to this, and this rectangle here is just a half. So for my answer, what is it worth? 1, 2, 3, 4 full rectangles, because remember this one is shaded, I move this piece up. So that's 4 full rectangles and then half of another. So 3 groups of 1.5 is 4.5 full things. You could count out halves, cut it in halves. There are other ways to do this question, but this is just a nice, quick, simple model. And eventually you get used to it, you probably do it in your head. We'll try one more example. So this one is how much is 4 groups of 2 3/8? So a little bit more challenging to draw. I'm going to cheat a little bit and use a rectangle, but then I'll try and do some of the shading on my own. So I'm going to say that's one rectangle makes 1. There's 1, and I have to have 4 groups. Each group is 2 3/8 in it. So there's 1 rectangle, 2 rectangles, 2 full things, and I'm going to take this one and I'm going to make it into 3/8. Before I do that, I'm just going to write out what my question would look like if we saw it somewhere else. So 4 groups of, which is multiplication, and we have 2 full things and 3/8 of another. So it's 4 times 2 3/8. Now, once again, what's it going to look like if we model it out? So I'm just going to draw one group of 2 3/8 to start. So this one here would be completely shaded. It's completely shaded. inconsistent here. That's completely shaded, that's completely shaded. Now I'm going to break this one into 3/8. And if you're doing 8s, you can do a little trick that we're good at halving things, pretty good at halving things. So if I'm going to say about halfway right there, I'm going to cut it right down the middle here. I use a different color. So I've cut it in half right there. So now if I want quarters, well, that's just half of a half. So I can go about halfway and cut down this way. I go halfway again in this side, and now I've got it into 4. So I'm freehanding this, and it actually looks pretty good. I could use the computer and use the line tools, but you wouldn't have that option if you were doing it on paper. And then finally, if I want 8ths, well, 8ths are halves of quarters, so I'm going to split these pieces that I have into halves, and then I will have 8 somewhat equal pieces. You know, I'm drawing it by hand, it's not going to be perfect, but I think it's going to look pretty good. Yeah, and then if I wanted to do, and if you wanted to have 16ths, well, you just half these pieces again. You can half them again to get 64ths. And if you notice, you know, those denominators are what you're seeing in imperial measurement. And you're talking about, you know, 64ths of an inch. It's because they keep halving everything. I'm going to get back my color here, and we're talking about 3/8, so I'm just going to shade 3 of these. Maybe use a bigger brush. Video's starting to get a bit long, but there's 1/8. And I'm going to cheat to speed things up again, and I'm going to just copy and paste that. I apologize to the OCD people out there that see that I went over the top of that. I think I'm one of them. A little better. Alright, so we have one group of 2 full rectangles and 3/8 of another. Now I need 4 groups. So what I would do is, if I was doing it with pen, draw them out with a pencil. I'm going to cheat, copy and paste. There's 2 groups, 3 groups of 2 and 3/8, and 4 groups of 2 and 3/8. And now we just got to figure out what's our total going to be. So if I count up the full ones, you got 1 here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 full rectangles this way. And then I'm going to start taking these and filling them in up here. So I'm going to start at the bottom. 1, 2, 3/8 gone. I'm going to fill that one, and that one. I'm going to start doing this one. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to fill 1, 2. That's full. Go down, and then my next one, 3. Alright, so now we can count them up. So I was able to make another full rectangle here, which makes 9. And then what happened to this one? I have 1, 2, 3, 4 shaded out of 8. 4 shaded out of 8 in this one. So if I'm going to write what this is equal to, it's actually 9 full rectangles and then 4/8. But we know that 4/8 is the same as 1/2. So if we were to do 4 groups of 2 and 3/8, we would actually have 9 full rectangles and half of another.